Right, we've got the newspapers with us right here on TVC Breakfast, and we'll be looking at some of the dominant headlines across the several papers before us, starting off with the Punch. And the lead story there is captioned "Economic Crisis: States Borrow 46 billion naira from banks to pay salaries." And there's some riders there, listing out a number of banks lending states 46 billion naira in 6 months as governors battle poor internally generated revenue. There's also the bit about the Fiscal Responsibility Commission issuing guidelines to banks over lending to states as well as ministries, departments, and agencies. Right, and there's a quote from the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Olukayode Ariwola, saying that judgments are based on constitution and not public opinion. Of course, this must have to do with the trending hashtag, so to speak, where it's been said that all eyes are on the judiciary as they deliberate and deliver decisive or crucial judgments in the election petitions before them. All right, that's it on the Punch. Let's quickly check out Salient Times. The major story there is Nigeria. Others face sluggish growth on debt burden and joblessness. This is according to a latest report by the World Bank. Down there, the Senate probes alleged killings of 250 Nigerians in Ethiopia. And up above Salient Times is, this story about a 70-year-old woman by name Oluwatoyin Bokno, who made the news on Wednesday in a viral video where she was seen and heard cursing guests at her birthday over the purchase or non-purchase of, the birthday fabric, the celebration fabric that she sold to friends. That's it on Salient Times. You can get all the details of these and more on Salient Times. I'm looking at Vanguard newspaper now. The big story there is about states split over federal government's 35,000 naira wage award to federal workers. That's on Vanguard, the first the major story there on Vanguard. And the riders there go on to state that will key into the federal government's template. That's from Enugu, Edo, Ondo, Ekiti. But for the states like Kebbi, Delta, Oyo, and Adamawa, and others, they have said they will be negotiating with workers. But for Niger State, Vanguard is reporting that the federal government cannot dictate to them what they will pay. And some other stories there. Presidency and Atiku disagree over certificate that the president, Bola Tinubu, submitted to INEC. 22 drown as boat capsizes in Niger State. 6 bodies recovered. And the court-martial declares Major General guilty of $1.476 million theft. And CJN to judges, we must rise above temptations and trials. Let's check out Daily Trust now. Farmers, varsity students abducted in Borno and Katsina states. Governor of Taraba State begging army chief to save the state from bandits, just as members of the House of Representatives ask army police to deploy personnel to Katsina State. Daily Trust also goes on to talk about flood displacing 563 persons in Adamawa State, and that hazy weather unsettles drivers, asthmatic patients in Maiduguri. Also, e-ticketing delay threatens 22 billion naira revenue on Lagos-Ibadan Itakba trains. Quickly, Nigerian News Direct is next. Nigerians in Ethiopia under peril and torture. That's according to the Senate, as they have now moved to probe the killings as well as the illegal detention of 250 Nigerians. FG assures Nigerians of issuance of new passports within 2 weeks of applying. Non-oil export grew by 39.9% in 2022 to $4.82 billion. This is according to the NEPC executive director. And there is some feedback from the presidency, as stated on Nigerian News Direct, with the president's spokesperson saying that Bola Tinubu's certificate is not fake. This and more on Nigerian News Direct. Finally is Daily Independent. The U.S. Consul General is given reasons on why coups are sweeping across Africa. Will Stevens, they're identifying sit-tight attitude of some leaders in Africa as a major cause of the worrying political instability in the continent. Some other news there made it to the front page of Daily Independent. We are focused on development and not Tinubu's academic records. This is according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuga. Senate probes alleged killing of Nigerians in Ethiopia, and IOC's divestment shows indigenous firms have come of age. This is according to the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board. Theophilus.
We'll move to the Guardian newspaper here. It says, crisis looms in varsities over mass exodus of lecturers. And we have a breakdown of the IPPIS salary payments based on Konua's 2 of 2019. Moving on, beware of landmines. CGN Ariwola warns new Federal High Court judges. Gunmen abduct 5 female undergraduates in Katsina. Tragedy in Senate as journalist dies. Ministerial nominee slumps during screening. That's the story in the Guardian newspaper. We move to Business Day. Uproar in oil sector after NNPC favors MRS AA Ranu again. That's in Business Day. Nigerians tap 208 billion naira pension savings as job crisis worsens. We move to First Nigeria. Chicago University presidency breaks silence. Insists Tinubu certificate not fake. Says varsity confirmed president didn't submit fake academic results to INEC. Argues no person can forge a certificate he already possesses. As ex-APC deputy spokesman Frank begs US, EU, AU, UK to prevail on Tinubu to vacate office. Okay. We'll move to the Daily Times this morning. It says here, Chicago State University certificate. Presidency opens up. Waves off claim of forgery against Tinubu. The writer says you cannot forge what you have. Asorok says the certificate presented to INEC, not from us, says CSU official. I joined gang at 7, killed 6 persons, 14-year-old confesses. International passports to be ready within 2 weeks, according to federal government. The Daily Sun says, tragedy at Senate's Kaduna ministerial nominee slumps while being grilled by senators. Journalist collapses in NAS, dies, 3 nominees confirmed. Trouble looms in health sector, 31,000 primary healthcare centers collapse. The Sun Media Foundation to partner National Assembly on healthcare. This Nigeria says here, ministerial screening. Bad day for Balarabe as nominee slums revived. Senate confirms Tinubu's 3 nominees. Journalist slums dies at National Assembly complex. The next story says here, Kogi APC suspends campaign as Ododo visits family, community of slain member. Obua hails tribunal ruling, Lords Fubara's victory. Mohbad court remands Naira Marley, Sam Larry, others in prison custody for 21 days. And finally, the leadership newspaper says here, Ayedatiwa Akeredolu Ondo Assembly snubbed Ganduje. Chicago Varsity saga. We have no time to waste on trivialities, says federal government. Senate confirms Balarabe 2 others ministerial slots and nominees. World Bank tasks Nigeria, others on stability, job creation. That's in the leadership newspaper this morning.
Theophilus, we've got, so many headlines, understandably so, from the papers that we have seen before us, that is here. But I'm looking at Daily Sun, the biggest story on Daily Sun, which also is reflected in some other papers this morning, is on the tragedy that occurred at the Senate. The news wasn't just that a ministerial nominee, that's Balarabe Lawal, the secretary to the Kaduna State government, slumped during his screening, but there was a tragedy that occurred as a journalist collapsed. A journalist from Tribune newspaper, Tijani Adeyemi, he slumped. Yeah. We understand that he suffered from a cardiac arrest, in the NAS vehicle, and by the time he was rushed, for medical care, he died.